How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video. As you can hear, my voice isn't just there yet, but it's well enough for me to be able to make this video because it's a big one and I did want to talk about it before it's too late. We do have another video coming later this evening with Baby Ink, so do make sure to check that out as well. However, with this video here, you can see that Sony has plunged 10 billion after its PS5 sales cut. But a bigger issue is its near decade low games margin. Now, obviously, this is a big issue because Sony has been pumping a lot of money into their games. And, when you're looking at 395 million dollars for a game, you kind of expect a return. And, well, that margin, that profit margin has been decreasing pretty much for a while now, and now it's apparently hit single digits. Welcome back to another video. I'm Chaos Prime, and today we're going to be looking at how Sony has managed to squander $10 billion, as well as the truth behind HellDivers 2 and PlayStation 5. Now, here's the key points. As you can see, around 10 billion of value was wiped off Sony's stock this week after it cut its sales forecast for its flagship PlayStation 5 console for the fiscal year. Basically meaning that they had a target to hit where they believed they could shift as many consoles, and they're just not selling. This goes hand in hand with the fact that Microsoft has said that the console market has stagnated, it's not growing, and this is kind of proving that. Analysts who already thought Sony's PS5 target was too lofty told CNBC a bigger issue for the Japanese tech giant is the company's declining margins in its key gaming business. Analysts are questioning why Sony's gaming margin is not higher despite higher margin products like digital sales of games and its PS Plus subscription service. So as we can see down here, we've got around 10 billion of value was wiped off Sony's stock last week. That's a lot of money, and this is because they projected 25 million consoles to sell for this fiscal year, and they only now expect to sell 21. That's a 4 million deficit of sales, which when we were talking about the PS4 or the PS2 would have been unheard of. But as you can see, Sony this week announced it now expects to sell 21 million units of the PS5 in the fiscal year ending in March, compared to with a previous forecast of 25 million. That pretty much tells you that the console just isn't shifting enough consoles and isn't doing as well as it could, especially with the fact that the major first-party titles have now been pushed to 2025, with the potential possibility that they are all now having a PC version of that game created in order to go day and date with PC. It kind of coincides, and you'd expect there to be a little bump in popularity, but because that wasn't announced, there's no way to really know. It says analysts were watching another key metric, the operating margin in the gaming business, which came in at just under 6% for the December quarter. So it didn't even hit 6%, it was like 5.9 or something, according to a CNBC calculation. By contrast, Sony's operating margin was more than 9% in December quarter of 2022. So 2 years ago, or 12 months prior, it still wasn't in double digits, but at least it was almost there. Now it's lost a staggering 3%, knocking it, well, more than 3%, knocking it down into less than 6%. This shipment forecast cut for PS5 is not what is disappointing. So they're still saying that, that over 3% deficit isn't what's disappointing. What is disappointing is the low level of operating margin. Atul Goyal, equity analyst at Jefferies, said in a note to clients on Wednesday, because what's happening here is that despite them having more digital sales, more success with PS Plus, and just increased value in how much money they're making, their operating margin is actually decreasing, and that's a bad thing. If you're making more money, that should be increasing, but they're clearly having a massive problem here. He added, prior to the January to March quarter of 2022, margins at the gaming unit were around 12 to 13% in the previous 4 years. So that's double digits. Double digits is always good. It shows healthy growth. The latest quarter's single-digit margin for Sony is present despite various tailwinds that should have driven up the margins towards 20%. So had this been, a few years ago, the way digital sales are going, the way PS Plus sales are going, especially with the increased price, they would have, you would expect them to have around 20% in operating profits, their operating margins. But that's not the case here. You've got less than 6%, which is extremely disappointing. He says their revenue on digital sales, add on content, digital downloads are at an all-time high, and yet their margins are at decade lows. This is just not acceptable. It's pretty damning when you think about it. All this time, Sony has been pushing games like Spider-Man, and whatnot, really big high profile cinematic experiences. The Last of Us, they're coming up with Venom, they're going to be doing Spider Man 3, which they're even talking about maybe splitting into 3 games. It's a massive, massive issue for Sony as their costs continue to spiral out of control. And, even with the consoles shifting in the quantity that they are, number one, these games just aren't selling or as well, not as popular anymore, especially with first party games being on a decline. Spider Man still, for the record, hasn't broken even yet, and if it has, Sony's kept tight lipped about it. But for the time being, at least until as far as we know, it hasn't broken even. Now with Spider Man 2, which came out last year and is produced by Sony owned Insomniac Games, costing around 300 million to make, according to the gaming website Kotaku, citing an internal presentation that was leaked after ransomware hacked the company. So those are Insomniac leaks that they're talking about here. But clearly, they've these prices, this cost here, these cinematic experiences, which are essentially like movie style storytellings, they come at a huge cost, and if they're not making their money on top of them, they're not making their money back. That's a real problem, and Sony's now seeing this. And now with the success of Helldivers, where it released day and date on PC, I think right now Sony will be looking at that really closely and will be saying to themselves, you know what, this is the type of revenue we need, this is the type of cash injection we need. Releasing it on day and date on PC might just be the way forward. So expect, in my opinion, the next true first player, single player, story driven cinematic game that they release to be on the actual PC. That's my prediction. So these budgets, he finishes off by saying, seem to have a significant impact on their gaming margin over time. And Sony and Insomnia Group did not immediately respond to CNBC's request for further comment. But this is damning, very, very damning in itself. And it just shows that, Sony right now themselves are just not in the best of position. Sure, 6% is still 6%, but it's really nothing when you compare it to what they were doing previously, which was double. Now, this one here is really interesting. Now, a lot of you have been saying how Helldivers 2 has been doing amazing. It's been doing the rounds. It's been, it's been knocking everyone's socks off. And I've been saying that PlayStation players just aren't playing the game. They're not in there, and it's the PC crowd that is carrying the numbers. I mean, it's really... Remember how when Palworld came out, it was, Xbox fans saying, look at these Steam numbers, and PlayStation fans were saying, well, that game isn't... You're looking at Steam numbers, you're not looking at Xbox numbers. Why are you cheering Steam numbers? Well, the tables have turned now, right? And you've got the likes of all of them now cheering the Steam numbers as, Helldivers 2 has hit nearly, 450,000 concurrent, which means no one on PlayStation is actually playing, considering the servers have capped out at around 460,000. Now, Matt Piscatella here is saying from Circana's Player Engagement Tracker, Helldivers 2 has been a huge hit, but it's mostly coming from PC. Of daily active users on the respective platforms, nearly 1 in 4 US Steam players are now playing Helldivers 2, while fewer than 1 in 20 active PS5 players are playing while fewer than 1 in 20 active PS5 players are playing. And as you can see here, it's less than 5%. The actual daily percentage of US active panel playing for Helldivers 2, less than 5% for PS5, and then you've got, of course, 25% for Steam. Now, that's crazy, right? Now, I was saying when I saw the numbers that 450% was huge for PC, but if they don't have the server space, they're kind of screwed, right? Because there's that, and the fact that I was thinking PC players were being prioritized, but it does seem that the 5 people on Twitter that are actually crying that they can't log in are the only people trying to actually play this game on PlayStation. Last night when I went in to actually play HellDivers 2, I couldn't see a single group available. There was no players. There was people on the servers, but there was no real players. And obviously the people that were on the servers clearly were PC players. So it really does seem like PlayStation players outside of Twitter aren't really playing this game. And, I'm going to try and get my review out if my voice holds, because my review to this isn't as glowing as everyone else, but more on that in another video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. We now have confirmation that not many, PlayStation players are playing HellDivers 2. We have confirmation that PC is 100% carrying the overall player count, the overall game. And this also, bodes well for Sony, because now they can see that when they take these sorts of risks, or when they're looking at games like this, or just future single-player cinematic games, releasing them day and date on PC could be the way they can increase their profit margins. And as this game has been highly successful thanks to PC, well, maybe this is going to be the catalyst that changes the complete narratives of all the PS5 fans, and Sony finally goes day and date to PC. Well, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's have that discussion, and I'll see you in the next one.